what I came to discover is that in our culture, we have a surplus of information available to us, and yet we also have a health deficit. And so my curiosity is towards how to bridge that gap. And there was this intuitive sense that each one of us has inside of us a guide, a compass, an inner teacher that is wanting to lead us towards choices that are both soul and body nurturing, but somehow that the voice of this inner compass, this inner guide, call it our soul, has gotten drowned out by the noise of our conditioning, of our beliefs, of all of the information out there, and the belief that the information is going to come from outside of us. And so I began to explore that more and more in my work, and eventually it has led to the development of something that I call soul coaching. And so soul is just a word that essentially identifies this inner compass, this inner knowing, this inner guide. And this inner guidance system is available to us in literally every aspect of our life. But because I myself have had such a passion around health, and there's this recognition that the health of the body is such a boon to our authentic expression, is such a boon to our capacity to show up in our lives, in our relationships with as much vitality as we need to really be there and to really be of service and to enjoy ourselves too. One of the things that I find when I'm working with clients and also students, because I've been training nutritionists and yoga teachers for many years as well, is that there's this frustration around this gap that I'm speaking about between what we know we should be doing and what we actually are doing. And I think there's this kind of belief in our culture that we just need to be more motivated, or we just need to line things up a little bit better, or control ourselves a little bit better or get a little bit more disciplined in order to get things going. And I have found that that is not actually the way. It can be a temporary help and it can temporarily kind of put us on track. But I believe that there is a much more effortless way, that there's this outpouring of self-care that is constantly coming from within us, that guides us to the various choices that we're making. And in fact, this word effortless that I'm using, I really mean that. It's like there's a sense of no longer making choices from the mind, but essentially it's just happening through us. There's something else that begins to move through us that is making the choices. And so you can well imagine that it's going to be important to let go of our concepts and our beliefs. And I'll talk a little bit more about that as we move through the evening. But it's about orienting ourselves towards other aspects of our being that want to contribute to our well-being. So most of us are referring primarily to our minds for our choices and our decisions. And the encouragement here is going to be to bring in more of your faculties, because your body wants to have a say, your feelings want to have a say, your soul, your heart want to have a say. And so we can learn how to listen to all of these aspects of our being. And then when they line up, that is kind of a straightaway for the soul to kind of come through. So if the body is saying one thing and the mind is saying something else and the emotions yet something else, we have this kind of lack of coherence, which then makes it very difficult for the soul's voice to come through. And so essentially we're looking to align our whole being with soul, with whatever is true for us. And it's in that environment that this outpouring of soul energy comes through, which may not necessarily line up with our beliefs, but may surprise us in terms of its wisdom and its intelligence and the way that it knows what is best for us. My question to you is, are you ready to let this inner expert, this inner compass, have a chance to guide you on a more consistent basis? Are you ready to learn how to do that and to give yourself the time and the space and the curiosity and the openness to see what happens when we begin to rely less on our mind and more on this inner flow of intuitive guidance? One of the things that I want to make really clear is that although I'm speaking about like a soul guided self-care, there is no perfect way of doing this. So what I'm saying is that soul guided self-care isn't perfect self-care. It doesn't mean that, oh, as soon as I get this all lined up, I'm going to be making all the right choices, because in terms of the soul, there really are no right and wrong choices. Everything that we choose, everything that we experience is essentially feedback for our system. So it's really just a question of beginning to be willing to trust and orient yourself towards listening more closely to the soul, letting yourself miss the mark, but using that missing of the mark as an additional source of information that brings you closer and closer in line with what is authentic and what is nurturing for you moment to moment. In terms of the body, one of the key starting points, I believe, when we are wanting to encourage effortless self-care is this understanding that the body is our ally in all of this. It's not the enemy, even though it might have symptoms right now. It doesn't need to be coerced into doing anything, right? We seem to think that we need to sort of take control of the body and make it heal or make it do something. But the understanding that actually the body is embodied spirit, and it has all the wisdom and the love and the intelligence of the spiritual realm, because it is spiritual. It's just dense spirituality. And so that's the first orientation that I think is so key to begin with, is that my body is my ally. My body already has this capacity to heal itself. And more than anything, what I need to do as the body's owner is to rekindle trust in my body. And so we don't necessarily need to, you don't have to believe what I'm saying here. I'm not asking you to just, jump from where you are to complete trust in your physical body. It's a process, but we need to experience for ourselves that the body actually is such a willing ally on this journey. And one of the things that we can do, say, for example, if you have a symptom right now, or an illness, or just maybe a lack of energy, whatever is going on in your body, rather than trying to fix that or trying to find solutions to that or looking outside of you for answers, the encouragement is to just stop for a moment, to slow down and take a breath, and then turn the antenna inwards. What better place to find out how to best take care of the body than the body itself? So I turn towards this physical body, and there's this attitude of respect, of openness, of availability, and this kind of a question that we drop in, which is, How can I help? What is it that you need from me? Right? So we're orienting towards creating a deeper and deeper friendship with our body. And once we begin to do that, we're often very surprised by the amount of information that begins to come forward, both in the moment, but also as we start navigating our lives. Just that turning the antenna inwards consciously begins to create that kind of inner awareness, even as we're out there in the world. So we can be out there in the world, right? So the antennae are out, but they're also in at the same time. And so simultaneously, we're functioning, we're doing, but we're also listening. And and this creates a scenario where the body can really feed us ongoing information. And then we can actually begin to develop a greater trust with each other, right? So it's not just us who's lost trust in the body. The body in some ways has lost trust in us, right? So when we're feeding the body things that just don't serve it, that don't feel good, that take away its energy, that create inflammation, that are very difficult to digest, the body actually begins to mistrust, if I can use that word, us, right? So there's this whole rekindling of the relationship that needs to happen slowly but surely, just like it would happen in any relationship where the trust has been broken or where the trust has not been really developed. So it's this willingness to re-engage that intimacy with the body and to learn to listen. A lot of people might believe that they need to be more motivated or more disciplined in order to take better care of themselves. And I haven't really found that to be the case. Motivation and discipline are actually natural qualities of the soul. So we don't need to be more motivated or disciplined because it's already here in each one of us. Of course, the soul wants to live in a healthy body. Of course, it wants that. Of course, it wants to guide us towards that. So it's not really a lack of discipline or motivation that's happening. It's a lack of soul connection that's happening. And once we can open up that communication with the soul, then the qualities that are inherent to the soul will come forth to assist us in the choices that we're making. So the soul is naturally kind. It doesn't tend to criticize us when we do miss the mark. The soul is naturally motivated and disciplined. It's naturally loving towards the body. It's intuitive. It makes authentic choices. So these things will all naturally start flowing forward once we begin to possibly identify and question the beliefs that we might have around why it is that we're not currently taking good care of ourselves. The other thing that I think is extremely important to look at when we are longing to develop effortless self-care is the emotions. So in this moment, as you listen and you think about your current state of self-care, what feelings predominate for you? Is it confusion? Is it frustration? Is it overwhelm? Is it apathy? Is it irritation around your family that aren't supporting you or that kind of seem to be pulling you off the wagon? And the key thing with emotions is to realize that we have a belief that emotions get in the way of us doing the right things for ourselves, taking good care of ourselves. But the orientation in the world of soul coaching is that all of the emotions that you're currently feeling around self-care are not only not in the way, they are the way. So when you think about your current self-care status, and you think about whatever it is that, whatever emotion arises there, frustration, overwhelm, whatever, where do you feel that in your body? Right? So often we'll feel it somewhere along the center line of the body, maybe some tension somewhere as well. But a lot of times it's the chakras that will start getting activated. So as I'm connecting to the group here, I'm feeling some throat, pretty strong in the solar plexus as well, some heart too. It may be elsewhere for you, but that's what I'm noticing here. And so the invitation is actually to turn towards these energies, right? So when you have a challenge and energies are evoked, they're evoked because life is saying, in order to see clearly, see your way clearly through this challenge, what is needed is to acknowledge and open to and liberate these feelings. These feelings are actually sitting right on top of your intuitive knowing. And so they're not in the way, they actually need to be open to be welcomed in a sense. So that, and once you do begin to open to them in that way, what that does is it gives the emotion more space to move in. Because usually when we feel an emotion around something, our energy is spent trying to resist because we think, I need to get rid of this overwhelm in order for me to take better care of myself, right? And so I need to get rid of is a pushing against. And so now you're caging that overwhelm in even more. So instead, it's like, oh, I feel overwhelmed. Okay, open to that. Maybe this is here to help me. And so I bring my attention to this feeling of overwhelm with just curiosity and openness, kindness. And as the space kind of expands around it, the energy starts moving more because it's got more room, right, in its cage. And eventually, the door just opens up and it can completely liberate itself, leaving in its wake inspiration, motivation, clarity, creativity. Every emotion is sacred. Every emotion is sacred. Every emotion is here to liberate itself. It knows how to liberate itself. And your body and soul nurturing practices are actually encouraging that. So your emotional state is not a measure of how well you're doing. In fact, a lot of times when we make great changes to our health choices, quite intense feelings can move through. But if we can begin to see that that is actually a positive thing, and the less we resist, the more elegantly these feelings can move through, then we have this possibility of continuing to orient towards greater spaciousness for our moments just as they are, greater openness to new possibilities for ourselves and for our bodies, greater fluidity in our emotional bodies, which helps us, but it also helps everyone around us, and greater access to the clarity of our soul.